Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to the race reaction for the 2024 Las Vegas Grand Prix. Hope you're all doing well. If you were with me for the watch along earlier, welcome back. If you weren't, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Hope you enjoyed the Grand Prix today, where we saw, of course, from the image there, spoiler alert, I suppose, Max Verstappen crowned a four-time Formula One world champion, and George Russell take his second win on the road of the season. Well, his third win on the road of the season. His second win officially after, of course, his disqualification in Spa after what was a thrilling performance from him, or a stunning performance from him for a pretty decent race, is what I was trying to say there. There we go. I will be joined by Stuart in just a moment. Just a quick heads up though, I did do the watch long earlier if you didn't know, so my notes are a bit sparse, and by sparse I mean they basically don't exist. So this could be interesting, but we'll see how we go. Maybe could give us another half an hour. Whatever, we'll get through it, I'm sure. Lots to talk about, so let's just jump straight into it, I think. Oh, Jesus Christ. Morning, Stuart. How are you, other than slightly delusional?
Good morning. I did make as many notes as possible, so hopefully you can lean on me where you need to for this. I'm doing okay. I can feel the slight buzzing around my skull of the lack of sleep kicking in, so I think this is going to be a fun one. Plenty to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, Q Americans and Australians in chat going, "Oh, stop, Mo! Do you think you've got it bad? We have this all year." Yeah, but 3:30 is a bit much. I'm going to be honest. 3:30. There's a 3:30 a.m. That was a bit of a surprise. But yeah, how did you find the race? What did you vote in the poll? I think I said in the stream earlier, sort of decent, good. I don't think it was epic, but it certainly wasn't dull. There was plenty going on, and obviously with the championship technically at stake, I mean that's always adding something to it.
Yeah, I thought it was good. It was good fun. Turn 14, well, I guess, down the Las Vegas Boulevard into turn 14 was proving to be quite the action hotspot. I'm sure people argue among themselves about whether the DRS is dialed in correctly, but it was giving us some overtakes and some action down there. I think strategy-wise, it was quite interesting, as it sort of early on we saw it transform from what was an expected one stop into a two stop, and drivers and teams having to sort of react to that and plan what they were going to do. I think there was a bit of ebb and flow between who was in control of that race, but yeah, I thought it was interesting, and we had obviously people like Hamilton coming from out of position on the grid, let's say, to almost challenge for the win. Yeah, so there was plenty going on there, and of course we got the championship on top there, which I think we sort of expected.
Yeah, we'll get to that set, but just on the strategy thing, was there a point in that race where, because we were talking about it in the watch along, and some were saying maybe a 2.5 strategy, one of those races where borderline three stops. Was there a point where you wondered about a three-stop race? Because I know where wasn't the issue, it was the graining, but I was quite surprised that we got so quickly to two stops, and I thought, there might be a third stop in here for some, obviously apart from those going for fastest lap. But did you think that was going to be three, or do you think two was always going to be the way to go?
At around, lap 24, when Norris was getting on the radio saying he wanted to stop again already, and we weren't even halfway through the race, I did start to wonder if... I mean, I didn't feel confident about a three-stop, but I did wonder what is happening here with the graining of these tyres. It did seem like it was really a lot more aggressive on the tyres than we thought, and I think people might have been considering popping a third stop in there. Yeah, it was very strange. And especially, what was it, early on when Leclerc suddenly dropped behind Sainz and then dropped behind Verstappen. He pushed a little bit too hard in the first stint and then suddenly had nothing left on his tyres. The track was biting back, and I think it was interesting seeing them sort of have a mixture between pushing and reserving their tyres. I think there was a lot of tyre reservation at the beginning when they thought it was going to be a one-stop, and then when they realised it was a two-stop, we saw a lot of drivers... I think Sainz particularly was on the radio asking to be able to push harder now that he knew he was going to take more stops than he thought. But yeah, surprising, I think, especially considering all the talk before the race started was it was a very confident one-stop race that we were about to see.
Yeah, I mean, that was the talk pre-weekend. It would be a one-stopper, so it was a surprise. But yeah, I know we will get to Ferrari team radio. I've got a few bits that I'm going to read the quotes in full, including the swearing. I know, Ooh. Dangerous. I'm so naughty. Let's get into the run-through then, starting with Mercedes and George Russell and what was maybe some recency bias here, but I think one of his best drives. I think he was absolutely faultless today. Really good start to keep the Ferraris at bay, and then some really, really good defending against Charles Leclerc early on to keep him at bay. And then sort of after that was fairly comfortable for the most part. I mean, he never really looked back. Had good gaps to those behind throughout, and then his teammate was closing in the latter stages, and there was that moment where I think a few people sort of going, could he do it? Could there be a fight at the front? But then George just started to deliver a couple of laps, and you thought, well, maybe the pace is there. Toto Wolff saying after the race that he thinks they could have gone even quicker today, so maybe some tyre preservation there for George. He just played it perfectly today. He pitted after others. He didn't have to make the decision first. He didn't need to risk that. Just a really faultless drive from George Russell, and it's somebody said in the qualifying watch along. I've been live most of the weekend, it feels like, for the qualifying watch, and they were sort of saying that, do you think George is one of those drivers that will never get the recognition he deserves? It's funny because he's won today, drove extremely well, but it's been overshadowed, if you like, by Max Verstappen winning the title, and that's what people will be talking about for the next week and for the rest of this season. So I sort of think, oh, poor George, he's delivered a drive like that, and everyone's talking about Verstappen, understandably, but he deserves the credit for that performance. And I think one of my favourite things about this weekend is Mercedes getting pole and Mercedes winning, and then going, oh, so what have you done to the car? And they go, they have no idea why they're fast, and I love it. It's brilliant.
It's a funny old year for Mercedes, isn't it? Like, I think even as recently as the last race, we'd sort of written them off for the rest of the season. They sort of had their little mid-season high, and then they seem to be settled into their third or fourth best position, and we're just going to ride the rest of the season out because they were sort of in a kind of no man's land in the championship, and then suddenly they come back and deliver a 1-2 and a kind of a dominant all weekend performance, discounting what essentially were a couple of mistakes from Hamilton in qualifying. So yeah, great day for Russell. I think the first stint of the race kind of fooled us a little bit with how this was going to play out, because I did think, oh, suddenly Ferrari have come alive on these medium tires and a lot of fuel. I mean, they really looked like they were going to take Russell, and Russell was vulnerable, but he did a great job to hold them off. Obviously it's all ifs and buts. You can't really tell what would happen if Russell had not managed to hold them back over their first stint, and whether Ferrari would have been able to take control of the race, or whether Russell on the hards would have just been too much for them over the rest of the race. But yeah, great defensive driving, and then after the first stint, no one really got anywhere near him, even Lewis Hamilton. I think that the offset in tyre life, I think, was what did it for Hamilton at the end there. And I think I don't feel like Russell was ever particularly scared. He did get a move on a little bit, but I think everyone did in that last stint. Everyone seemed to find a little bit more pace, and there were sort of a flashes of fastest laps and fastest sectors all through that. So yeah, another great weekend for Mercedes. Surprisingly, I think Mercedes must be feeling good after this race, after this whole year, really, that Russell is well placed going into this post-Hamilton era to lead that team. There was a lot of, I think, perhaps slightly misinterpreted talk about Toto Wolff saying that, he's got to be wary of when Hamilton's shelf life runs out. He's getting older now and things. But I do think being confident that in a post-Hamilton world, Russell is going to be your guy. I think they're okay. I don't think he's necessarily shown the spectacular yet. The kind of, when you sort of see in a Max Verstappen, oh yeah, this is going to be the guy. But I think Russell, he's smart, he's fast, he seems to have a little bit of an Alonso-esque full picture of the race going on around him. Very communicative in a productive way. So yeah, I think this is demonstrative of a good George Russell race, and if he can keep delivering that, then they'll be well placed going forward.
Yeah, because obviously don't want to look too far ahead to next year, but that is the big question mark, isn't it, for next year? You're losing a driver like Lewis Hamilton. Can George step up? And I think you're right. They can really look at this season, and particularly races like this, and say, when we get it right together, George can deliver, and that's what they need. And I think him and Antonelli next year is a really fascinating dynamic. And with the rumours never going away about Max Verstappen potentially being available sooner than expected, who knows? That could end up being quite an important shootout between those two. So we'll not get into all of that today. But I think George was brilliant today. I agree. I don't think there was probably a moment where he sat and thought, "Oh, here comes Lewis." And I do think he had more pace in the bag. But Hamilton today was I think, for very different reasons, just as good as George Russell. I mean, to come from 10th place, feisty, battling through some good overtakes. Yes, maybe DRS was a bit powerful. We've sort of touched on that already, but came through the field from 10th place after his mistakes, ended up P2 and only 7 seconds off the lead, all things told. But I think Verstappen made the point that Hamilton was pushing hard on his tyres after that pit stop, and I do wonder if, they say, don't they, that or it's well known that you push too hard after a pit stop and take too much life out of your tyres early on, you'll suffer later and they might not give you the optimum. But his pace was there pretty consistently. And he was closing on George rapidly. But I agree with you. I think towards the end, a combination of Hamilton's tyres sort of falling away, all that life has gone from him, and then George maybe picking up the pace a little bit. Sorry, I had the mic there for some reason. And George picking up the pace a little bit, maybe just put put pay to that. But I did wonder at one point if Lewis was going to do it, actually. I think there was a lap where he sort of went 1 or 1.2 seconds quicker, and I went, hang on a minute. And then the timing tower went crazy and he swapped places, and I went, what has happened? But I think he had the pace today to win, did Lewis Hamilton, as demonstrated by George and demonstrated by his own speed. And it was ultimately the mistakes in quality that cost him. And I find it quite amusing post-race, because he said in the pen, he was asked, is this a question of what could have been? And he sort of went, oh, no, I'm not looking back. And then about a minute later went, but if I hadn't qualified back there in the first place, then we could have had more sense. It's like, so you are looking back, Lewis. Just I don't blame you. It's natural that you would. So you put him on the front row, let's say, with George Russell, and I think we'd have had an epic fight for the win today. So just great stuff from Mercedes, great drive from Hamilton. Did he get driver of the day in the end? I think
I didn't see the final tally, but he was well ahead in that kind of 5 laps to go count. So yeah, I'm pretty sure he did.
Yeah, so I mean, just a cracking drive from him. Great from Mercedes. Big points, and obviously it's too little too late in the Constructors Championship, but they've at least, I don't know, extended the gap to Aston Martin to try and make that more dramatic than it actually is by quite a margin. But yeah, no, great stuff from Mercedes, and I'm not surprised, because I said on Thursday in my preview, I just had a gut feeling, and I sort of said in there, don't write off Mercedes. I just felt high-speed track, cooler or cold temperatures, they could be a threat this weekend, even though I went all in on Ferrari and feel a fool now. But they've not, so I'm not really shocked that they've performed today, but a little bit surprised by how comfortable it was for Russell and how not easily Hamilton came through the field, but it didn't feel like the Mercedes of the last couple of years, where they get sort of stuck in the midfield, or they get stuck behind cars and they can't get through, the pace isn't there, struggling in a straight line, tyres going off. They just seem to have the speed today. I think they were quickest. In fact, I'm just looking at they were 1-2, Sean. They definitely were quickest, but you know what I mean. I think they were clearly the quickest team out there this weekend.
Oh yeah, they definitely were. I mean, they should have been 1-2 in qualifying as well, to be honest. In some particular order, I think Lewis has struggled a bit more with the unpredictability of this car, the inconsistency. We know this car. I mean, we can see it from race to race in that sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. But also, they've spoken a lot about this car sometimes being there, sometimes being not, from sort of lap to lap. Definitely worked much better here, but I think two mistakes from Lewis really in Q3 on both of his hot laps really put pay to that, and I think he'll probably be kicking himself for that, because whatever he says in the press bin about not looking back, I think that really kind of sealed maybe the cap on his potential race result here today. Although I also believed he could win. I find it fascinating that the 4th team in the Constructors title, with basically no hope of advancing from there, has 4 wins. What a strange. Having said that, the 3rd team has 8 wins. So it's just one of those a very strange seasons. I hope, I know we sort of joked a bit about how Mercedes are fast here and they don't even know why. I hope they can learn something from this season, and maybe kind of understand why they were fast here and how to be fast on a more consistent basis, because 4 wins are great. Knowing why you're winning is even better. Otherwise, we're just going to have another one, because this is kind of the 3rd season in a row where they haven't really understood where they are or what this car's doing. It would be kind of good to be able to at least get one season under these rules where they actually know what they're doing. but yeah, I'm happy for them, and I think Lewis was an absolute star today, making moves. He there was that interesting moment after his first pit stop where he came out sort of into a bit of traffic. I think he came out behind Norris, and I think he thought he came out behind Piastri because he seemed furious that like he'd lost loads of places during the pit stops. But I don't think he quite realized how much of a jump he'd made through that first stint and through the pit stops. I think he thought he was much lower down than he was. They didn't seem to tell him that he was actually doing fine. But yeah, I thought it was really interesting. I think he's just used to sort of accidentally being bungled into a wrong position.
Yeah, maybe quite apt. I suppose Mercedes have their way, don't they, with strategy sometimes. And he does get frustrated with it over team radio. But yeah, they came back to him and they said, well, you would have been 5 places lower if we're not pitted now. So, it's. I think a lot of frustration from Lewis Hamilton this weekend. I think he sort of maybe didn't put that across in the pen, but I think he knows that it wasn't a mechanical problem in qualifying. They were his mistakes. His teammates won. He's finished second. He clearly had the pace today to win, or at least battle very hard with George. So I think there is some frustration there, and I think there will be a feeling of what if. But I still, and it's interesting actually. Very quickly, sort of the weekend was building up, and Sky were talking about his comments in Brazil about if this is the last time. Etc. on the radio, and they were talking about how, I don't know if this was officially confirmed, but they were talking about how that was him effectively not wanting to come back for the final 3 races. So I still think even with, I mean, I'm glad he has, because I think it'd be really disappointed if he just disappeared from Mercedes for 3 races. What he's achieved with them. These final 3, they're going to be important. There'll be a big send-off for him, but I think there's always going to be an air of frustration, but there's also, it feels very much still, and I think we said this last time, didn't we, like he's counting down the days a bit. That's not a criticism at all. I also will point out I hate the fact I have to cover everything I say about Lewis Hamilton in case I set off that lot, but the cult, and I did say cult, but yeah, no, I think he just feels a bit like he's counting down the days, doesn't he? And I think he's looking forward to Ferrari, but I think get to Abu Dhabi, I think it's been more emotional than maybe. It's not that it's coming. I'm trying to word this right, but bear with me. Then it's coming across. I think it doesn't feel like it's an emotional farewell yet, but I think Abu Dhabi is going to be quite an emotional one for him. And I'm glad that if it was a case of Sky was saying that he didn't want to come back for this weekend, I'm glad that he has, and I think that this might be their best shot of a win. They've got it with George Russell, but I'm going to be honest, and it's nothing against George, I kind of wouldn't have minded seeing Lewis win one of these final 3 just as a farewell to Mercedes, but it's going to be tough because I think Qatar's a McLaren track by the look of it, and Abu Dhabi, who knows, but yeah, I'm going to start waffling. If there's anything you want to add to that, Stuart.
Yeah, I know exactly how you're feeling. It's got to be a weird kind of time psychologically as well for him, kind of. I think he's been frustrated with this car particularly this year, and probably looking forward to Ferrari, even though I think he knows Ferrari comes with its own potential frustrations. They have their ways, but also I think if he was carrying on for another season with Mercedes, like this whole sort of mini renaissance kind of and good weekends they have like today, it's all about building the team together, getting as many points as possible, working out where the car is, developing for next year kind of thing. He would finish behind George today and be like, I could have won, but we won together as a team and we're always learning and developing. But he's leaving the team in 2 races time. Like, I don't think he's interested in building this team up, or I think he's not as interested in the team game right now. So it's got to be kind of a different feeling to how it would normally be if you're like, you're having a struggling year, but you're building towards something. He's not that interested in building this team towards something because he wants Ferrari to be building towards something. I think the transition year is always very hard, especially when it's quite rare you have this position where you're like you've had like basically all of your success with one team. You spent most of your career here and now you're moving on, and you're sort of, your mindset is moving away from wishing the team well and building something together, and you're having to kind of like not wish them ill, but kind of move away from thinking that, and you're starting to distance yourself from the people you work with and stuff. It's got to be strange, and I think it's a thing that most of us won't really fully comprehend, because when you move jobs, you don't necessarily like it. You don't move to. It's not a competitive thing, is it? when you move a normal job, you're not thinking, oh, well, I hope the job I'm in now does terribly, so my new job will do well. Yeah, I don't know how to phrase that properly, but yeah, it must be weird for him.
I don't know. I moved from one Aldi to another, and I was surprised by the hate that each store has for each other. So there is a bit of competitiveness there, but I take your point. Yeah, it was catty is the word I'd use. Ferrari then. So congrats to George, of course, and to Lewis as well. As always, it's a reaction, not review. So we'll get to Q&A later, and I'm sure you can pull us up on anything we've missed, chat. But Ferrari, Carlos Sainz, not a bad start as such, but sort of spent that first corner, I think, being a bit more concerned about keeping Gasly at bay and left the door wide open for Leclerc to slide through, which was a good move as well at the start, but dropped down to third place. Was frustrated. It did get back up into second after Leclerc had a pop at George Russell and kind of ate his tyres up, really. But then I think, do you know, I'll tell you what, the story of Ferrari today is one, what could have been, and two, team radio. So this weekend was so important for Ferrari. This is the track that they expected to be good on. This was their strongest one of the final three. They want to win this Constructors title. They really could have done with the 1-2 today. It's going to be tough from here on out, but you know, never say never. But Sainz's pace was good. Leclerc's pace was good, but nowhere near what I expected. I thought Ferrari would be the team to be doing what Mercedes was doing, really, being 1 and 2, dominating. And in the very early stages, when Leclerc was attacking Russell and Sainz was kind of there waiting, it did feel like the race pace was there, but then, overcooked the tyres. They were then struggling on those tyres. Sainz saying over the radio, I want to come in. Guys, I want to pit. Hello, anybody there? Then had that weird moment where he did come in, but then cut the pit entry and went back out on track. Stuart didn't look at that. I just caught the start of half of Ted's notebook before going live, and apparently Fred Vasseur has said that the new race director, Rui Marquez, treated that as a track limits infringement rather than cutting the pit entry line. So that was a bit of a surprise. I thought that was a slam dunk penalty. In fact, I think Karun Chandok said it in commentary. It was it was going to be in trouble, but nothing came of that, and it was a track limits, which part of me thinks that's nice that he's not been penalised for what was a bit of a mistake and ultimately didn't really, no harm, no foul. But I do worry that's a bit of a dangerous precedent to set because that can go wrong very quickly. But, he's not got a penalty for that. And I think Sainz drove really, really well. But over team radio, just frustration over not being able to pit when he wanted to and being asked, when you do think, or asking a team, let me know when it's plan C, because I think we can get off these tyres and all, and just all this deliberate. I know that teams to an extent do debate strategy over the radio, but Ferrari, it just seems, I don't know if they play more of it because we all laugh at it, or as a Ferrari fan just sit and cry, but it just always feels like they're debating or they're not quite sure, and I think, they cooked their tyres today, there's no doubt about that. Sainz wanted to be off them, and I always say, they've got all the data, the teams, but if your driver's saying these tyres are terrible, get me off them, listen to your driver. I get it. Teams have more data, but Sainz first. We'll get to Leclerc in a minute because I'm going to read his entire set of quotes. But a bit frustrating strategy, question of what could have been, and it's all a bit tense and bitchy. Ferrari is kind of my summary there.
Yeah, I think it's the kind of, it was that kind of race that just would get drivers frustrated. Clearly, they were struggling on their tires more than they wanted to, and Sainz wanted to change things up again because I think he could smell a better result than he was sort of getting. And to be honest, I think Ferrari also have to temper that a little bit because I think they have to see the bigger picture and say, well, we can't throw you onto new tires too early because we have to get this car through the whole race. We can't get to the point where you're at the end of the race and you've got no tires left because we stopped too early. They need to, I think they do have a bigger picture in mind. And I think you're right. Maybe the communication is a bit not where it needs to be. I think they need to maybe have sit down between races and be you need to be confident with what we're telling you. We can't have back and forth. You need to trust us a bit. In both ways, I think they need to know when Sainz is no, these tires are gone, I cannot stretch them any further or whatever. So yeah, and I think they get more frustrated in the car than when they're a bit more reflective. When Sainz was in the press pen, he did say, he thought a bit about what could have been, but actually the Mercedes were too far ahead in performance, and it would have been a long shot to have maybe got to second or something. I think that's what he believes, having got out of the car. So, yeah, and I think we're going to see the same thing with Leclerc when we talk about him, about just the frustration in the moment. The pit lane thing was interesting. I meant to look up the actual rules because someone replied to me sort of saying about how in the international sporting code rules around tracks, the standard rule is you don't cross the line if you're coming into the pits. You have to commit to being inside the line, but you can cross it going out. But there are also race director notes for each event that may modify that, and I haven't really seen those. So I think on paper that's a legal move. Whether you want to question whether it shouldn't be, whether actually the race director should have said, once you're committed to the pit lane in line, you have to stay into it because it's too dangerous to be kind of flying out onto that pit straight otherwise. So yeah, but I think, I think on paper that's legal.
Now you've said that, Hamilton Hockenheim 2019.
Yeah,
and there was no penalty there, was there? Yeah, there was no penalty for that. So if there's no penalty there, then that must be a legal move. That's a good point, actually. Yeah, it just came to me then. But I mean, I initially thought Sainz had slid wide. I thought he'd sort of had a slide and had to rejoin. But no, he just. I'm still not clear, I don't know if it's in your notes, whether he made the call to come in or whether they called him in. Because if they called him in but they weren't ready, then they're idiots. And if he came in but didn't let the team know he was coming in, then that's his mistake. So I'm not really sure what that is.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. And I meant to scroll back through the little audio, the radio transcripts on Multiviewer, but a lot of things were happening. I actually missed it happening because I saw him and Hamilton both come into the pits and went down to my notes to write that they were coming into the pits. And when I looked up again, Sainz had disappeared. I got really confused about what happened. So yeah, very, very strange. I only caught it on the replay once they started talking about it. Yeah, I'm unsure if Sainz called. I don't know if chat has got any more on that.
Chat's saying that they called him in, which just makes that's baffling.
Very Ferrari. I think, and we'll get through this, there were 3 instances through the field of pit lane mishaps of people not being ready. So maybe staying up till midnight to go racing affects us all.
It's just weird to me then that, they're like, okay, Carlos, box this lap, box. And then he turns up and they're like, oh, we weren't ready. Well, you called me in. And I think he said on the radio, wake up, guys, come on. It's like, yeah, exactly, Carlos. How weird. If he's just come in and then gone on pitting, then fair enough. But goodness me. Anyway, Charles Leclerc, well, not happy generally. Pace seemed pretty good early on, like I say, but then cooked his tyres too soon when fighting Russell. That resulted in maybe an earlier stop than they'd have liked. And of course, then he fell backwards from there and was always sort of uphill battle. There were some team orders moments, though. So he emerged from his second pit stop ahead of his teammate and was told by his engineer that, and I'll quote here, Carlos has been told to not overtake, but it is really close. You might be just in front. He has been told to not put you under pressure, so just take care of your tyres. Sainz then swooped past him, to which Leclerc said, quote, maybe try in Spanish. So it's already touchy at that point. And then post-race, if you don't like bad language, I apologise, you can mute this bit, but I'm going to read it in full. Is it Bosey or Bozzy? It's Bosey, isn't it, his race engineer?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So Bosey said, pick up, please, to which Leclerc said, yes, whatever you want, as always. This is post-race. Bosey said, Charles, you did your job. Okay, thank you. To which Leclerc said, apologies again for the language. Yeah, I did my job. But being nice fucks me all the fucking time. It's not even being nice. It's just being respectful. I know I need to shut up, but at one point it's always the same. So, oh my fucking God. To which Bosey said, okay, but anyway, you did the right thing for the team. I love that anyway. And then said, pick up, please. To which Leclerc said, fucking pick up what the fuck you want. And the radio is on and I am sorry. To which Fred Vasseur said, Charles. And that was it. So I don't know what the outburst, where this frustration has come from. But post-race, he was asked by Sky, what was that about? And he said, and was it about the fact the team were favouring Sainz? And he said it wasn't about favouring Sainz, and then said, quote, it's about things we were told that weren't respected. Chat, Stuart, what is that about? So what's happened there? We know that there were some orders. Carlos Sainz told to let him through, then told not to pass him on pit exit, and he did, and that's what set Charles Leclerc. But then he's saying it wasn't to do with Sainz, but what else could it have been to do with? Maybe a bit of frustration that they didn't deliver the pace they thought they would, but just a bit miffed was our Charles.
Yeah, I can only think he was referring to that particular pit lane call. Because if you get told your teammate's not going to challenge you, then you relax a bit, you don't defend and stuff. I mean, this is, classic multi-21 stuff, right? When you're told that you're not fighting and then your teammate fights you and you're like, what the hell? And I don't know if there's anything that went on before the race or whatever about how they were going to conduct themselves to maximize result. I don't know. And I mean, again, we're coming back to being furious in the moment, being full of adrenaline and stuff like that, and sort of getting to calm down. Because also when he was interviewed later, he did say, I don't think it's right to get into it. I'm not going to elaborate on this because I don't think he just wanted to. I don't think he wanted to start a flame war through quotes. And I do think there is a bit of a cool down, and you're like, okay, we can talk about this like adults. But he does seem very, very angry for what essentially was a good result for him and the team. Okay, he could have got maybe third instead of fourth, but I think they maximized things together. I don't know if he's really, really excited about trying to get second in the driver's title or something. But very, very animated for not being particularly screwed over, I would say, in the race result today, unless something happened early on that he thought he could have won or something. But yeah, weird, very weird.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. I can imagine, like you say, heat of the moment, everything going on. You've got your teammate won't pass you, then he does, and you've got people being told to move over, etc., etc. And it's like, what's welcome to being a Ferrari fan. I'm just staring at my screen going, what like, why? It's so baffling, and I kind of maybe some frustration because of the not delivering the result he wanted or missing out on the podium. Maybe his teammate got it, but it's a very I don't want to say over the top response because adrenaline pumping, you're going to say things, aren't you? I mean, I'm going to say something in a minute, but it was the bit at the end when he said, pick up what you want, and the radio is on, I'm sorry. So he sort of, when you have an argument with your partner, and they leave the room and you go, that's what it kind of felt like with Charles Leclerc at the end there. So, that was, it was interesting. I don't know what to say. I'm still slightly delirious.
Next year's going to be fun.
Oh, it could be great next year. Can't wait. A lot of fun. Yeah. What else on Ferrari, Stuart? I mean, I don't know what to say. I can't really analyse that anymore because I don't know what he's talking about. If it surely has to be related to the team orders and the team radio and the Carlos Sainz situation, because otherwise it doesn't make sense. But then we haven't had the full context. And again, he said that, there are things that are discussed before the race that then aren't respected. So what's been said pre-race, so we haven't got the full context there. So it's kind of difficult, but it just seems like quite an extreme reaction to, like you say, considering the result wasn't that bad, but it is also potentially that he's missed out on a podium. So it's just very, again, it's easy to sit here watching a race and to talk about it post-race as well. We're not in the car, but it does feel very, all right, Charles, just take it, like you say, a bit of cool down time and then go and punch a wall or something, or throw a plant pot. I don't. Why a plant pot? Stuart, help me.
I don't. It is particularly interesting because I think Leclerc had a couple of bad things happening during the race. He cooked his tires too early in the first stint, which kind of cost him position and stuff. And then again, they lost out to Sainz again in that second stint, through the second pit stops. But also, they swapped positions. Sainz let him through when asked, when he was suffering, during that period when he was like, get me off these tires. And Leclerc and Hamilton were pulling up to him. He did move over for him. So it's not like, there's got to be an element to Sainz. It's like, I'm in this for Sainz because I'm not here next year. You kick me out. But actually he did he did let him through, even though he did get it back again. So it's not like there's like a fierce animosity between them, then they're not working together. They clearly are still working together. So it just seems particularly fiery for nothing on paper that I can see is particularly awful, apart from maybe that one moment where he got a surprise overtaken when he told he wasn't going to be.
Yeah. I'm not going to add any more. I don't know. But Constructors' title's tough here. Qatar and McLaren track. We don't know about Abu Dhabi. So maybe there's a bit of that as well from Shaw. Look, guys, we need to be working together because look at what we could achieve. And I don't know. But hopefully we get some more before Qatar. But it was very, very interesting. Lewis says, I assume pre-race sites agreed to team orders. Maybe it could be something like that, couldn't it? That's the pre-racing that we're talking about. And James Hoffer says UK fans don't know whether to laugh or to celebrate or cry. With respect, James, if that's your only contribution to the conversation, thanks. Secondly, I'm from the UK and I'm a Verstappen fan and a Ferrari fan, so I know exactly what to do. Laugh and celebrate Verstappen winning the title and cry my eyes out about Ferrari being awful. But a lot of fans of British drivers are probably very happy today because Brits were 1 and 2. So, I'll never understand people's need to hop on any stream or post to just troll for the lols because, if that's your entire identity, good for you. Max Verstappen is a 4-time Formula 1 world champion. I know, shocking. Did everything he needed to do today. Did everything he needed to do. He just needed to finish ahead of Lando Norris, and that's exactly what he did. I thought he was going to get a better result than he actually ended up with, because he was at one stage running quite consistently actually and quite regularly in the podium position. So I thought it was going to be even more comfortable, but he had to finish ahead of Norris today. That's exactly what he did. Absolutely bang on performance. Race pace much better than I expected actually as well from Red Bull today, or from Verstappen, sorry, from Verstappen. No offense, Checo, but yeah, that was a great performance. I think a better race pace than I expected. Running in the podium place for a good chunk of the race. Fell back in the latter stages. Said struggling with a bit of grip as well. Ended up P5. But the thing is, the key thing in the notes, the only thing that really matters for Verstappen today was that he beat Norris. That's the key. Title all wrapped up. 2 races to go. 4-time world champion, 4 in a row as well, joining, is it Fangio, Schumacher, Vettel and Hamilton as the only drivers to do 4 in a row? Absolutely incredible. And when you sort of, you look at this season as a whole, he has clung on a little bit, or it's felt like he's clung on a bit. It's not been as close as maybe 2009 with Button, for example. It absolutely hasn't been that close. But it still felt like he's clung on a little bit, and I think the performance there was absolutely what he needed. And it wasn't spectacular, but I think the key for me was when GP came over the radio and sort of effectively said, paraphrasing here, but effectively said, let's remember what we need to do today. And that's exactly what Max did, and said, I'm just driving my own race. Ferraris went through, didn't fight them too hard. I think if that happens in Qatar, he's going to put more of a fight up. Today, it was just about getting the job done. That's what he did. And I think it's just amazing. And what a season, full stop. I mean, somebody in chat was saying in the race watch along, this season's been terrible and boring. Sure.
What?
Right, yeah, I know, right? Did you watch last year? That's good for a Verstappen fan. But no, I think this has been a great season. It's not the greatest season, but it's been a great season. 4 different teams, 4 different wins, or 4 winners, 7 different drivers winning, and Max Verstappen still comes out on top. So, and the point as well, he made the point, I'm kind of rambling a little bit, but how many ways can you say wow? He said post-race that he likes that, I say this, but I don't know if it was partly tongue-in-cheek, but he says he likes that each of his championships have been won differently. He's not done, nothing has been conventional as such, has it? We had obviously what happened in 2021 all season, forget just the final race, all season. Then 22, rocky start with reliability, and then sort of dominates and takes the title. 23, cruises to it, and then this year he's had more of a fight. So, he's at least keeping it interesting. But yeah, I've not got much in my notes for anybody, but certainly not for Verstappen, other than the points I've just made. But just huge congratulations, I guess, Stuart. And I mean, what is he? He's still only about 14, isn't he? So he should get another 10 yet.
Yeah, it's just been a phenomenal year for him, really. And I think it's important to say, yes, he had that very strong car at the beginning of the season, and he did gain a huge amount of points there. But over the entire season, whether he's had the strongest car or the third best car, whatever, he has maximized the points that he could get from that car, and his rivals have not. When he's been struggling, he's still been able to get podiums or fourth. He's still been right there. He gained by Canada, I think he'd gained quite a big by sort of Miami and stuff. He gained a big margin over his rivals, but that margin doesn't really close up until like Italy, Azerbaijan, Singapore. That's when like Norris starts to kind of cut in a little bit, and that whole middle period of the season, like if his rivals were doing as well as he was driving, they should have been cutting into that lead and getting closer to him in the title, and they didn't because Verstappen was just bringing the car home as high as he possibly could. He's been driving phenomenally all year, and I think it's really important actually for him to have this kind of season, because last season there was Red Bull won all but one race, and that's the kind of thing where you can be like, oh well, he's in the best car, isn't he? It feels like it counts less to some people that he won a championship last year, and then when you stick him in this car and he has to fight tooth and nail, sometimes a little bit over the line, but fight nonetheless. I think it really demonstrates how good he is, how worthy he is of the titles he's got. So yeah, you can't heap enough praise on him. I think the most surprising thing about today was after like a lap or so after they said, think about, I can't remember what they said there, think about the big picture or whatever, don't forget the goal today. And the Ferraris were closing in on him. He actually said, do you want me to keep the Ferraris behind me or not? And they were like, yeah, we do. But I've never seen him so nonplussed about having to defend a position. I think he was just focused on just nailing that goal today, which very rare for him really to even consider not being that fussed about giving up position. Yeah, you can't really heap enough praise on where he is right now. He's definitely the best of the field, and I think by quite a margin. I think people are going to have to step up next year and realize where their deficiencies are compared to him, because even if Red Bull go into next year with the constructors relatively where they are now, I think that Max's rivals are still going to have to fight tooth and nail to beat him.
Yeah, I mean, at times this season, third, even fourth fastest car and still delivering results he needs to. Yeah, I agree. And I think there's... I can't remember I can't remember the exact numbers, but there's something about, McLaren have probably had the best car since Miami. And Verstappen was... I think Norris was 50-odd points behind Verstappen or something like that. But the lead has grown since then, despite having the second, third, and at times even fourth fastest car. So I think I agree, and there is bias here, and I'll admit that, and that's fine. But when people say, oh, he only won last year because of the fastest car, yes, he did all the damage in the first half of the season, but since not having the fastest car, he still extended his lead. So I think it won't put that to bed. But I would also, and I know Thomas over on Discord, we've talked about this a lot. You go back through Max Verstappen's F1 career and you look at before ever having the fastest car for a season. When he first moved to Red Bull, he was winning races during Mercedes domination. When Ferrari were up there with Mercedes and Red Bull were the third best team, he was winning races. So this idea that he only wins in the fastest car, whilst people are going to disagree, I will say that's bullshit, quite frankly. Winning championships, you've got to have one of the fastest cars. You're not going to do it in a Sauber. Ask Valtteri Bottas and Zhou Guanyu. Of course, the car is massively important, but the driver makes a difference. And you look at him versus Perez. You look at Hamilton versus Bottas. You look at, to a lesser extent, Schumacher Barrichello, because there were, that was Schumacher's team orders all the time. But you look at those, the best drivers make the difference in a team. And that's what Max Verstappen does. So I hate that. It was the same with Hamilton. I'm not a Lewis Hamilton fan. But when people were sort of like, oh, he's only winning because he's got the fastest car. Shut up. Come on. He's had a difficult season this year, but he still won races. He had a difficult couple of years Mercedes with a bad car, but it's not just about having the best car. There's a lot more to it than that. That's too simplistic, I guess, or too one-dimensional is how I feel about that. But I think Max Verstappen has been... excellent this season. There have been times where he's gone over the line. I still think turn 7 in Mexico was just appalling driving. But in terms of the championship, it was actually the right thing to do is the wrong phrase, but forgive me, I can't think of the words, but the right thing to do in the sense that had he not held Norris up at that point and kept him behind, Norris could have and probably would have won that race because he had the pace late on to get those Ferraris. So actually, looking back, that worked for him. So not nice, naughty at times, but I'd rather have a grid full of Senna's, Schumachers and Verstappens than Bottas's, Ricardo's and I don't know, Ocons or whatever. I just saw 3 names on the list there. Sorry, I'm not attacking those drivers, but I'd rather I want to see. It's like Leclerc over team radio. It's weird at the end of the race and it's sweary and you're falling out with your team. But I'd rather have that passion than someone giving me the PR BS. I want to see the human side of these drivers and I want to see drivers giving it everything. So that's my opinion. There's bias in there. That's fine. I'm not even looking at chat because someone's going to call me a knob, more so than normal. But yes. Race-wise, I guess, did what he had to do is kind of the summary there, Stuart. But his teammate, do you want me to read my actual notes or shall I be sensible with my notes?
I don't know. We're going to have to censor we're going to have to bring out the bleep machine again.
Well, as people have pointed out, I've already got a massive fines from the FIA for what I've been talking about. So I'll tone it down. So not good as usual. You can change your words around if you like. I've also written here, slow clap for making the top 10. I suppose I've got to give him credit, though, for making his way through. But, he shouldn't have been out in Q1 in the first place, and he did only go from 15th to P10, having battled the likes of, Fernando Alonso in a terrible car, Kevin Magnussen, Zhou Guanyu, Franco Colapinto, Lance Stroll, Liam Lawson, Esteban Ocon. So, I mean, I'm not going to get too excited about that, Checo. What I will get excited about, though, okay, is his 3-wide overtake on Liam Lawson and Kevin Magnussen. Sergio Perez, you can have a proper round of applause. That was ballsy. I'm going for it. That was a great move. Relying a little bit on Magnussen or Lawson not turning in and causing an accident there. That's one of those that could easily have gone either way. But really great move from Sergio Perez. Move of the race, actually. And I'm going to give him lots of credit for that because I think he deserves it. But overall, his weekend was poor again. 6 times eliminated from Q1 in that Red Bull. 6 this season.
Yeah. Well, I'll start on the overtake. Well, and then we're going to end on a low. Nonetheless, I did think that was an incredible move, and occasionally reminded the sort of flash of bravery and brilliance of Perez, that the kind of thing that got us excited when he got that seat in the first place. Yes, finally, Perez gets that seat. I think everybody, all 3 of them, did well there because we've spoken a few times about the perils of going 3 wide, where the outside cars can't see each other, so they're kind of unclear about how much room they're sort of giving across the whole 3 wide span. That turn 14 closes up quickly into that little chicane, so that could have just been a squeeze into the walls so easily. And I'm really impressed by all of them that they managed to hold it all together there, and no one even really particularly left the track. It was very impressive. So yeah, well done to Checo for that. Not well done for almost anything else. I mean, a lot of my notes involve overtakes, but like you say, I got like Zhou for P6, Lawson for P13, that kind of thing. Which is not what you want. I mean, I guess he gained a bunch of places, but that's kind of classic Perez, isn't it? He qualifies badly and then has to claw his way up to mediocre points. And we're going to repeat ourselves again today, but yeah, just not good enough. And on the day we crown a world champion with 8 wins in the same car, and you've got no wins, it's not great. It's, when you've got 7 drivers who have got multiple wins and you haven't, and your teammate's world champion, it's not great, is it? So to be honest, I don't think he's happy, and I don't know if he's got potential to actually go to any other team, but I just feel like he'd probably be more comfortable doing that and doing one of those building up a midfield team jobbies that a lot of drivers do late in their career. I don't know. It's weird, isn't it? But yeah, we can talk about whether he's going to be there next year or not. But it's going to do the same old stuff. It's hard to know what to say again, because it's kind of like every race we're like, yeah, well, Perez didn't turn up again.
Yeah,
and
that just
we
ends
like
up
him,
being.
but yeah,
I was going to say then we end up being like, will he be there next year? Don't we? It's driver market talk then. But I think, as two of Perez's biggest defenders on the interweb, I feel sometimes, Stuart, we've had to stick for it. Always finding excuse for him. I don't think there are any excuses, and I'll go back to what I said a couple of weeks ago, actually, or a few weeks ago. I kind of almost wish the retirement announcement for Mexico was true, because I know he's had a difficult year and a half, 2 years, but I kind of still would like to see, given what he's done in F1, him go out on his own terms. And maybe it is time for him to look at that. But at the same time, as we said, Stuart, if he says he's retiring, he loses any potential payout, doesn't he? So why would you? But the thing keeping Checo's hopes alive is who takes that seat. I mean, that's the point, isn't it? Back to this. We're not getting into it too much again today, but I mentioned in the watch along earlier this morning, the Colapinto stuff has gone cold. Looks like the Red Bull Racing seat isn't going to happen. Maybe something at VCarb or whatever they're going to be called next year, or in the future. Maybe there's something there if Lawson or Tsunoda gets a step up. But I go back to what I said a few weeks ago, Stuart. To me, and we talked about briefly yesterday on WhatsApp, but I think that Red Bull needs to be preparing for the future and what Verstappen's going to do. He's going to leave at some point, if it's inevitable, so they need to be preparing for that. They were caught out by Ricciardo, but also they weren't prepared for when Ricciardo went, which led to the Gasly Albon situation, everything that we had since that has put Perez there, which has ironically ended up with a stopgap as well, or sort of a stopper in the programme. They need to start looking longer term now, and I think for me, and it's not my decision if it was, I think Yuki Tsunoda has earned an opportunity in that Red Bull, and I think that he not should, but I would put him alongside Max Verstappen next year, and then I wouldn't put Colapinto in with Lawson. I put Lawson and Hadjar together, because you need to start, because I think Arvid Lindblad is the next one they're looking at sort of in that program, and they've got a few more additions this year now to that, so they need to start moving juniors through again, and use that team as a junior team as intended, and that's what I would do. I'd love to see Colapinto on the grid next year. Yes, he's had a couple of rough weekends with crashes. 50G, we'll talk about that later. Yesterday was a horrible crash, but that's what I would do in Red Bull's position. So I would both be surprised but not surprised if Checo isn't in that car and is in that car, if that makes sense, because I don't really see, other than Tsunoda, because I like Lawson, but I'm not sure throwing him straight in there next season is the way to go. I think you're just setting yourself up for another Gasly Albon situation. So I think Tsunoda, give him that chance. If he's dreadful, he's only got a 1 year extension. You can wave him out the door at the end of the year, and that gives you other options. And there might be people available at the end of next season. Who knows? McLaren could dominate next year, and Norris and Piastri might fall out, and one of them might become available. There you go. So I'd give Tsunoda a year at Red Bull. But very quickly, Stuart, I'll let you have your say on that, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Like, I think Tsunoda's done more than earn his chance to at least get a year in that seat. I know we've spoken about how he's actually a Honda driver, not a Red Bull driver, if you know what I mean, in the programs he's attached to. But they've got another year together, Honda and Red Bull, and then maybe, if you give him one of those year 1+1 contract kind of things where you can discuss things about whether you extend the contract. And I'm not going to open the whole can of worms on driver market stuff like that, but Stroll's basically asleep now, so maybe Aston Martin, when they partner with Honda, will want a bit of Tsunoda. Maybe that will become an option. Who knows? I've thought a little bit about, where there's going to be some like Christian Horner organizing some kind of domino effect where he'll end up getting Sainz somehow. But Williams seem so attached to Sainz, they know all his secret tattoos, so I don't think that's going to happen. But yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, Red Bull are on the verge of like getting themselves tied up in knots over drivers like they have done before, and spending years in the wilderness trying to fill a second seat with someone who can consistently bring home points. I actually think if they just stuck with Gasly originally instead of following him around, they would have been in a better position now. But who could say? But yeah, I just to sort of end on it, I don't think he'll be there next year because I feel like Christian Horner actively saying things out loud about how they've got lots of options for their seats. He actually said something really weird. He said, we've got, everyone knows they're contracted to our driver pool and we can change it as early as the week before Australia if we want to. And then he said, I mean, we won't do that because that's crazy, essentially. I'm paraphrasing here. But, like, imagine just, like, pulling the rug out from under Perez in early March. Madness. But, yeah, he is actively saying these things out loud now. So I feel like the writing is on the wall.
I think my point remains, again, as I've said before, what have they got to lose? A couple in chat. I mean, Yinka says Max would destroy Yuki, but he might get a win or two out of it, so it balances out. Absolutely, Yuki might be nowhere near Max's pace, but if he's scoring consistent points and picks up a couple of wins and is on the podium more regularly, then doesn't matter, does it? They don't want anybody, despite what they may say publicly. They don't want somebody in that car that can challenge Max. They want somebody in that car who will deliver the backup performances and be there to pick up the pieces when Max has a bad weekend or has a mechanical problem. Checo isn't doing that. He's not going to do that from 15th, 16th on the grid. So what have they got to lose? So I think, Tsunoda, Lawson, screw it. Hadjar, whoever you want to put in that car, go get Colapinto or try and buy out Carlos Sainz. By the way, very quickly, then I promise moving on after this line. If Red Bull do sign Carlos Sainz by buying him out of that Williams contract, my head is going to fucking explode. He was available for free and everyone was screaming, it needs to be Sainz, put him in the car, and he went to Williams, and then you go and pay the money to get rid of Perez and to buy Sainz. So anyway, we are going to move on because it's been an hour on the top three teams, but quite a bit to get through there, to be fair. Also, again, early start, I've already been live, so I am very waffly already. So don't forget, reaction, not review.
I mean, my notes start to dry up severely as we go through the next team, so I think it'll go faster.
Well, I've written, just very quickly, I've written under Aston Martin, Sauber, Williams and Alpine, apart from a Gasly point, find press release. So that kind of tells you all you need to know. Who have we got? McLaren then. Lando Norris P6, Oscar Piastri P7. Pretty miserable day for them, really. In fact, to quote Norris, a pants race. Is what Lando said. So there you go. I think that's very reasonable. I think drove well, but just didn't seem to have the pace to challenge those ahead. Obviously, title is done, which is a shame for him, but I don't think it was ever really on. Took the fastest lap and bonus point at the end, which was irrelevant for the Drivers' Championship and was completely relevant for the Constructors' Championship and important as well. So that was a good call from McLaren to go for that one. Mm-hmm. But just no pace today to challenge those ahead, really. Even without his pit stop, he was still 10 seconds behind Verstappen in P5. Piastri was nowhere as well. 5-second time penalty for him for a false start, which was a slam dunk penalty, but everyone's saying it was harsh. But if you're beyond your yellow line, then even if whether it's by a millimetre or a mile, it's a penalty. So I understand that doesn't sound like a big, a millimetre isn't a big deal, but you're over that line. It's, you are 1 kilometre over the speed limit in the pit lane. It's a penalty. So that's just the way it is. So harsh in some ways, I suppose, but that's just the way it is. But yeah, not much to say on McLaren because they were sort of a bit no man's landy in the end, weren't they? Or no man's Lando. No man's land in the end. Second best pun of the day. So Norris, 26 seconds off Verstappen with that pit stop as well. And then Piastri, 8 seconds further back and 8 seconds clear of Hulkenberg. So just, like I say, it's hard to kind of give them too much praise. But like I say, I'll read the notes again. Drove well, but pace just wasn't there.
I think that's the summary, isn't it? That's it. They just wasn't their track, was it? They couldn't make you work. They don't like the low downforce rear wing kind of setup thing. They couldn't. So I think 6th, 7th was the best they could hope for. I think they may be hoping that they'd be a little bit faster than the Red Bull, but again, Verstappen is just that extra factor, isn't he? I think it's kind of, I know the title was a long shot for Norris. It's a bit of a shame that I think he was all G'd up and building up momentum, and then he kind of lost it on 2 pants races, really. just had 2 kind of miserable middling races, and it just kind of petered away from him rather than sort of being able to have a bit more of a fight to it. I think I think there'll be a lot to reflect on. He was very sad after, in the gap between these two races. I think it took a little bit while to kind of. I think because Brazil was really the writing on the wall. I don't think he went into this race thinking I'm still fighting for it. But yeah, I think it's a shame that's where they are right now, and this is how he loses the championship in a just sort of a kind of blah kind of way. But I think they're going to have a good 2 races after this. Strange old race of Piastri, actually. I mean, they were both quite anonymous. We didn't see them that much, but Piastri had a bad first stint. He lost, a few places over the opening laps. Obviously, had that full start, which again is measured by things on the grid. So that's kind of same way as like speeding in the pit lane. It's like, yeah, we've got devices to measure this, and we know that you're out of position. Very hard to see actually on the replay. I couldn't really tell how he was out of position. I think he was a little bit forward. But then, and he had the penalty. At one point, he was 16th, and then got himself back up to 7th again behind Norris. So yeah, just a weird race for Piastri. Really, it wasn't really ever where I thought he was going to be. And yeah, a weird race all round. Norris wasn't happy on his tires. He was like Sainz, kind of calling for like a pit stop as early as possible. It just one of those blah days for them, really, and kind of a rare day where we didn't really see much of them. I don't know if you feel the same. I don't remember seeing that much of them.
No, just sort of Norris in the background of Verstappen and the Ferrari's early doors and things like that, and the overtake from Hamilton. Not really a lot of them. I feel like that was the case for a lot of it, because quite a lot happening towards the sharp end, to be fair. But yeah, not much of McLaren. And I think for Lando, the damage was sort of Brazil, wasn't it? Not so much, the Sunday, but the fact that he went from the win in the sprint and then pole position with his challenger down in 17th, or is the guy he's trying to beat down in 17th, that felt like the moment things were going to turn. So when we say that the title was never a battle, had that swung in Brazil, it would have been. So that was the moment. And I think for that race to go as badly as it did for Lando, and for Max to come through and win it, that's a kick in the guts. And I can imagine that's played on his mind a little bit. And then this weekend as well. He didn't seem too flat after the race in terms about the championship. He congratulated Max, and Sky said, is it a bit of a relief? And I thought, it's a weird question, but anyway, are you relieved that you didn't win the world championship? Oh, very. But I suppose they meant, we can leave you alone with the questions now and you can get on with it. But the focus for McLaren has been really most of the season the constructors, so that's just what they have to do. But I feel a little bit for him. I think he gets a lot of flack. Some people, I've been told by a few people in chat that they absolutely hate him because he's arrogant. If he comes across that way, I can tell you, having met him a few times in person, he certainly is not arrogant. He's probably one of the most approachable people I've ever come across, to be honest. But there you go. People read things, don't they? But no, I think Brazil was the damage, or it was the damage, and he was never going to come back from that. So in some ways, I'm sort of glad it's done, because now the focus can be the constructors. We can stop with the team orders conversations, and they can just get on with it. If Piastri's leading and Norris is second, then they can just leave that alone. Let those two get on with it. Let them fight even, which would be good for us. But Qatar should be good for McLaren. That is a very McLaren track. So I expect they'll be back on form next weekend, and maybe we'll see Piastri versus Norris for the rest of the season. But I don't know what I'm trying to say, really. Just I feel a bit for him, but also it was never realistically on, unless you flip what happened in Brazil substantially. But Piastri, I agree. I couldn't tell you anything about his race other than 5 second time penalty for a false start. Slam dunk, defunk, as Five said. Yeah. Can you tell a bit since 3:30?
I mean, I think that's it. There's not too much to be able to say on McLaren. I think they'll. I think it's good for them. They got what essentially was like a dry run at going. I mean, they're probably going to win the constructors, but are going for a proper all-out assault on the drivers' championship. If this sort of continues naturally into next year, I think they'll be well positioned. I think they will hopefully have learned a lot. I don't find Norris arrogant. I think he's very introspective and reflective, and I think he knows his worth. And I think it's important to know that. I mean, Verstappen came into Formula One very much knowing his worth, and I think it's interesting, sort of going off race reaction a little bit, but in looking at them in their kind of Verstappen and Norris pre like championship challenge years, Norris has sort of built up to where he is now, kind of growing. Whereas I think Verstappen came in demanding positions, and I think his honing himself in came from just going a bit too far over the line. I think early years Verstappen, there was a lot of issues with him kind of just like barging people off the road and taking up too much spacing and being a bit too aggressive. And he kind of dialed in from that, from like being, I don't know, basically having an all-out assault on all the other drivers. Whereas I think Norris has built up from below. So it's interesting kind of seeing both their approaches towards being championship challenges. And we'll have to see if Norris has got, has got it to keep challenging over the next few years. But I think it'd be a weird race for him and McLaren today. And hopefully they're just like as you say, looking forward to the next two races where they'll maybe be able to go toe to toe with the cars around them a bit more and pick up some more wins. Because I think they probably deserve some more wins, or at least they were capable of some more wins. So I think they hopefully put some more down before the end of the season.
Yeah, and I'm kind of looking forward to just ignoring the drivers now and watching the constructors see what happens there, and also kind of ending the conversation on the drivers' championship, because it really amazes me how annoyed people get when you talk about what could have been and all of that, and it's like that's kind of become illegal on the internet in recent years. Like you can't speculate about what could have happened or what they could have done differently. You're not allowed to analyze anything. You have to go, well, that's not what happened, so it doesn't matter, does it? But it does matter. It's part of the conversation and part of a Formula One season, I guess. But Haas, massive weekend. Doesn't look like it, but it is. 8th place for Hülkenberg, 12th for Magnussen. Not epic from him, but it's points on the board. 4 points, which moves him ahead of Alpine again in the constructors, in what is an insanely tight fight now for P6. I think there's only, in fact, I'm just going to check it should spin round in a second anyway, but I'm just going to speed that up. That's the wrong one, Sean. Wake up. There we go. There's only, 40... So 50, so 4 points between 6th and 8th in the standing. So that's a great fight to keep an eye on. But Haas moving ahead of Alpine in the constructors. My notes are, well, that really important points for the World Championship that moves them ahead of Alpine, and obviously, of course, Magnussen involved in that fight with Perez and co in that 3-wide moment. But I've got very little on Haas, so I'm going to pass to you, Stuart, while I go and find their press release. And I'm sure you've got massively comprehensive notes, and you'll tell me all of Magnussen's secret tattoos, as you put it earlier.
Magnussen. Interesting, he was able to pull off the one-stop strategy. I didn't think that looked possible considering how much people were struggling. And actually, he did say that it wasn't the right way to go, and he spent too long struggling managing the tyres and keeping pace, and he probably thinks there could have been a little bit more. But yes, team back up to 6th again. I think we've spoken a lot about the sort of the teams at the front, Mercedes, Ferrari, McLaren, Red Bull, and how the ebb and flow between who's the most dominant and where they are has changed a lot over the season, how exciting that is. But actually the same is true in the second half of the field. We've seen, Aston Martin, who aren't really involved in this fight, but, they were stronger in the beginning of the year. Haas have kind of built up and been quite consistent. Alpine have sort of come and gone a bit, and then they got their big Brazil result. There's been a lot of flux in these kind of like 6 to 9, really. I know Williams kind of dropped out early, but they did have some strong periods. It's been really interesting watching these lower teams, and I think in seasons like last year, when you have a dominant team, we often go, well, don't forget about the midfield. There's a lot going on there, but it's actually, and also the midfield. This is actually quite exciting, and I wouldn't know how to call it, because I think Haas have probably been the most consistent, but then every now and again, like RB will throw up and they'll suddenly have 2 cars in the points, and then anything can happen going forward. A great drive from both of them, really, under the circumstances. I don't know what Magnussen would have been able to do with a 2-stop, but they both basically finished where they started in quite. I mean, Hülkenberg lost 1 position, but again, very important points for them in what has been a season of them just picking up 1 point, 2 point, 3 points, race to race, and it just built, having a consistent smattering of points that's really built something. And I think if they hold on to 6th, I think they'll massively deserve it.
I think Hulkenberg this year in that midfield has been one of the best drivers in that midfield, and if not the best. And I think as well, Haas have been one of the surprises of the season. We said it, after testing, they looked in trouble, and here we are now. So I think they've done a great job. I think Hulkenberg's been great as well. He said of his race, I'm very pleased. I think P8 is the best we could have achieved today, being the 5th best team. It was a clean race, good execution, and as expected, it was very challenging on the tyre side with graining on the front especially. That kept everyone occupied and busy. We came out of this well and offset ourselves a little bit to our main competition, and that worked well. And our pace was also decent. And Magnussen says, as Stuart's already touched on, we did a one-stop, which wasn't the right thing, I think, and that's why we're P12. The pace was good on the hard tyre, just bad on the graining wall on the medium. We struggled but kept on going and lost everything. So had to build it back up on the hards. It didn't feel like we got the best out of it. So maybe 2-stop was the way to go, but you're saving 22 seconds on the pit stop, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't realise he had done the one-stop, so that is quite a surprise that anyone tried that and that it worked. So there we go. No offence to Haas fans, but we're probably going to just move straight on. Probably fly through quite a few of these actually now. RB, I believe. Yes, it is indeed.
Yep.
Yuki Tsunoda, P9. Liam Lawson, P16. Tsunoda, I think, drove very well as well. Another one that did well today. Always seemed to be involved in something as well. Unless I missed it. But I always felt like he was, every time we cut to him, something was happening, which I suppose is why we were cutting to him. But it was good to see him sort of battling out there. Really important points as well to close up the gap on Alpine and sort of limit the loss to Haas as well. So a really good result from Tsunoda, who I think with... I don't want to bring him into the conversation too much, but Colapinto's crash... or crashes over the last couple of weekends, Lawson being down in 16th and Sergio Perez failing to really set the world alight again. I actually think that Tsunoda did what he really needed to do this weekend, not just for the team, but for the bigger picture. And I've been impressed with him. He's been quick. He was quick in quali, obviously. Qualified well. Lost a couple of positions in the race, but that was always going to happen with Piastri and Hamilton coming back through from where they were. So that's not a massive shock, but really good performance. Liam Lawson, though, again, he was the one in the middle of that sandwich between Magnussen and Perez. I wasn't blown away by him today, but I don't really think he did an awful. There was a bit of contact with Magnussen, wasn't there, early on, but I don't think there was, and I think there was maybe contact with somebody else, but I don't think there was anything overly dramatic, and I don't really think he did a lot wrong. Just not really anything massively of note outside of those moments there that I've just mentioned.
Yeah, Lawson was quite feisty in the early race, and obviously in that 3 race, I think he found himself alongside Magnussen quite a lot. But yeah, a bit low key for Lawson. I feel like you get the impression from both RB drivers, and not to go back on the long discussion we had, but you get the impression they have a sense of that Red Bull seat as a possibility. So they're just showing themselves now. They seem to be very feisty these last few races, and particularly, I think it was showed today from Tsunoda. 2 points from the team, so they are 3 behind Alpine, 4 behind Haas, keeping themselves very much in that fight. I think, as we kind of talked about with Haas, this is going to be something to watch over the next 2 races in the sprint. And they look great. They look like classic Sauber, which was always a good look.
I've just sent you something on WhatsApp. I was just looking for to find a press release, and I came across that on Twitter. It says, if you know, you know. I have no idea. I don't know. If you're on...
Oh, that's not what I...
No. I don't know what is going on. Such a strange moment. If you are on Twitter, go check. I might see if I can get that in. Hang on a second. There might be a way I can do this without getting myself in trouble. It's socials. You probably get away. I'm not showing any race. Don't worry. Let me see if I find... I don't even know what it is, to be honest. Let's go to... I was going to go to the watch on screen for a second because that's got screen capture. Let me see if I can squeeze this in somewhere. I don't know what is going on there. with with RB and that tweet. But if anyone has any idea why Yuki Tsunoda is dressed, or not dressed as, but is done up in the Buzz Lightyear costume there, please do let me know. But that's quite an amusing moment. Sorry, I just felt the need to share that with everybody. Why not? But yes, Stuart. I don't know what to do now. That was quite a drive. I think a great weekend actually for Tsunoda. Full stop. I remember going back to Mexico. We'll go back to the screen now. I remember when you go back to Mexico, sort of talking about the crash that he had and the mistakes he was making. He thought, is this the wrong time to be doing this and whatnot? And I feel like since then he's really found form again, and people have I think started to realise that actually he is a pretty bloody good driver, and he's come on a long way. Super quickly, do you think he'll be in the Red Bull next year, or do you think for some reason he's just not on their radar for whatever reason it is?
You never hear them talking about him, do you? But
no.
But you can never predict what Red Bull are going to do next with drivers. Red Bull and their drivers are like Ferrari with their sort of strategy. That's their kind of one flailing around madly with no real plan. That's their one weakness, and maybe for the best. No idea. I'm gonna say if I had to put money on it, I'd say no, but I couldn't tell you why. It just gut feeling.
Apparently, he said in the post-race show that the car looked like Buzz Lightyear. I think it looks like a late 90s, early 2000s Sauber, but...
Yeah, me too.
Sure. Maybe, I mean, Buzz is green, isn't he? Not teal. And all right, Yuki. That's fine. Sorry. Nothing else on Lawson. I couldn't find a press release. It's not out at the moment for some reason. So nothing really to add on Lawson. He... probably still remains favourite for that second Red Bull seat next year. So I guess just keep delivering. But I do wonder if the bigger picture is at play for all of them at the moment. So hopefully Yuki gets his chance, but it's not looking like it. Shall we fly through these last 4 teams, Stuart? Because I mean, yeah. Aston Martin, Alonso slow first stop, I believe. Things weren't ready at the pit stop unless that was Stroll on the replay, but seemed quite slow. Was it Stroll?
Yeah.
Okay, so it wasn't Alonso, but I still think a good recovery drive from Alonso to P11, 5 places gained, same as Sergio Perez, only 6 seconds off a point, which again doesn't sound epic, but when you consider where Aston Martin have been lately, I actually don't think that's a bad result at all for Fernando. Obviously, Fernando Alonso's goal is not finishing 11th. I appreciate that, but given, again, all things considered, I think he's done all right. So his quotes, his sound bites, as they call them, the pace of the car was much better in the race for us, and it was a nice surprise to be fighting in the points until the last few laps. The strategy was good, the pit stops were fast, so it obviously wasn't him, and I felt a little happy with the car in general, but there is no reward for 11th position, and I think we deserve to score some points tonight. I'm looking forward to getting back into the car for Qatar. And Lance Stroll, who came home 15th. It was a difficult race, and as I had no radio from the first lap, so I couldn't communicate with the team. We planned to stay on the medium tyre for slightly longer at the start of the race, but I could feel it dropping off quickly and wanted to get on a hard tyre. I just couldn't get the message through to the pit wall. It meant that when I did come in, the team wasn't prepared for the stop, and so it cost us about 20 seconds. We knew it was going to be a tough race, but I think P12 could have been possible today without the radio issues causing a slow stop. And then the usual stuff about we know what we need to do going forward. And congratulations to Max on the World Championship. So, not epic from Stroll, but he's not had the easiest of weekends, has he, for one reason or another. So maybe P15 isn't terrible. And actually, to be fair, if you take the 20 seconds off that he lost, he would have been P12, I think. Yeah, he would have been. So that's a good spot there. So, yeah, that's my lot on Aston.
Yeah, Stroll looks worse on paper than actually. Yeah, he's had a tough one, hasn't he, this weekend, as you say. So kind of did what he could, I guess, not blowing the doors off. But then Alonso isn't really either at the moment. I think they're just in a really tough position as a team. I don't know if the team need to have a better plan for if radio fails to communicate with each other. I mean, pit boards still exist, but I guess it's not really. Stroll can't hang a pit board out of his car as he goes past, can he? It's sort of limited to one-way communication. So that was a shame, but I don't think they missed out on any points from that, did they? And as we've said many times, I think they're not risking any constructors standing over these next few races.
No.
So yeah, just another continual disappointing kind of weekend for them. It was interesting that Alonso was happy with his strategy and pace, considering he did a very weird starting on the soft tyre for 4 laps, and then doing long hard stints. That was odd, but he seemed happy. So who am I to argue with a 2-time world champion who's been around since Fangio?
Before Fangio. He's Fangio's dad, isn't he? No, I think the soft tyre thing I sort of get. 16th-ish on the grid, somewhere around there, wasn't he? Kind of nothing to lose. You put the soft tyre on, street track, safety car, put the hard on, you look like a legend. But when that doesn't work, you look a bit daft, don't you? And like it's a bad call. But I sort of get what they were going for there. And I kind of feel like they're kind of in a position at the moment where they have to try things like that if they're going to get a great result. So, and if you do it on either driver, it's got to be Alonso because he can deliver that. But I still think not all eyes, but almost all eyes on 2026 for Aston Martin. So hopefully improvement next year, though. Alpine, I've got 0 on Ocon. He came home in 17th place, did try for fastest lap late on, but was nowhere near. 36.5 was his fastest. 34.8 was for Norris. So Norris ruined his chances there. How rude. But yeah, Esteban Ocon, I don't remember seeing much of him, if I'm being honest, but I'm sure Stuart will correct me if I'm wrong there. But on Alpine, Pierre Gasly, I'm gutted. What a qualifying session to end up third on the grid. What a lap. Went all out with this went all out with this setup. Mega result. And then his engine goes bang. The amusing thing is, Gasly said he had no power. The team said everything looks okay on telemetry, and then it blew up. Which, okay, at least they know what they're doing. So yeah, real shame, but a DNF for Gasly because of the engine going pop, and Ocon only 17th place, and definitely a weekend of what could have been. And I tell you what, as well, actually, back down to earth with a bump.
Yeah. After yesterday, after that big qualifying, I wasn't cynical, but I was like, how where can they take this? Because I think it was a bit of a surprise. Not a flash in the pan, but like it was a surprise that Gasly ended up. And Gasly has been very good at qualifying. He's been better than the car at qualifying. That's been his sort of whatever the opposite of Achilles heel is, Achilles arm. And I did want, from there I thought, okay, you can get some points. I think the big teams will overtake you, but I think you can still get some points. And it would have been a big opportunity to kind of really cement what they did in Brazil, just get a few more points to kind of push them a little bit further up into 6th place. And it's a shame they weren't able to do that. Big. I mean, yeah, he must have been absolutely gutted. Absolutely hilarious that an engine failure didn't come up on the data, but maybe that explains where the team are right now. And yeah, just a sort of badish race from Ocon. Alpine are kind of, they're weird, aren't they? They have got off the boil. They had a good bit in the middle. Like they started crap. They had a good bit in the middle, and they kind of went off the boil again. Brazil was a bit of a whoops. How did we manage that? And I don't think we're expecting much from them for the rest of the season. So to get that third, I think was a real highlight. But yeah, it's a shame they couldn't do anything with it. And Ocon said in his first stop, he went through the pit lane without stopping because they weren't ready for him.
That explains that then.
So yeah, that adds on. Not only did he stop 3 times, but he also stopped a 4th time without stopping. Yeah, so weird. Lots of lack of communication today and pit stop bungles.
Just surprising. But yeah, they happened at different times of time. Yeah, I was wondering because all through the watch I was going, Ocon's pitted twice. But I'm sort of like, we're only 15 laps in or something. I was like, how can he pitted twice already? But it turned out, obviously, that'll be why. He pitted twice, yes. So, disappointed for Alpine, gutted for Gasly, but they have brought themselves into play for 6th with that result in Brazil. So, 2 races to go. They still have a chance, but I'm going to back Haas for that one. I think that they've got a great shot with the pace and the Nico Hülkenberg effect that we have at the moment. Sauber are not last. Way, Zhou Guanyu. I've put a really solid drive from Zhou Guanyu today. Ran inside the points for quite a while actually, but ultimately ended up 13th. There was a point in the race where I was sort of like, I think he's got a chance of a point here. Obviously, it didn't happen. But I think he drove really, really well, all things considered, the car, and that he qualified solidly as well. And I think probably one of his better weekends of the season. And so he deserves a lot of credit for that. And Valtteri Bottas, 5-second penalty at the start, or pre-race, obviously, for new engine components. That put him down to the back of the grid. And sort of basically stayed there. He did, he was involved in some stuff, Bottas, and kind of wasn't always trailing around at the back, but he did end up 9.2 seconds behind Ocon in 18th place and nowhere near his teammate or anything. I'm not sure what's going on with Bottas. I'm sure if you've got some Stuart, you tell me, but it's not like an extra stop or anything. Him and Zhou both pitted twice, and maybe just Zhou had the better of them this weekend, and the penalty put Bottas on the back foot, but Bottas remains 23rd in a 20-car championship that 3 drivers in that don't even race in anymore. Logan Sargent, Ollie Behrman and Daniel Ricciardo. So come on, Valtteri, let's get some points for Sauber and get you off the bottom of the table there. I'm sure he's trying.
yeah, it's a bit of a shame for Valtteri, but yeah, I think the focus should be on Zhou, who had a great qualifying, maybe benefited a little bit from the disruption in Q2, but it doesn't matter. He ran a solid race, and this is kind of, we've spoken a little bit about this with Sauber, because we know the Sauber is the worst car, really, and where they need to be is absolutely ready to capitalize on anything happening. So there were times during that race where if a safety car had come at the wrong time, Zhou would have been on the cusp of points, maybe, or if the attrition was a little bit higher. It's slippery around here. They're racing at midnight, mistakes can be made, and if a few more people had tapped the wall or retired or something, then again he would be on the cusp of points. So he was there or thereabouts. Luck didn't come his way. I think he would have needed a bit of luck to kind of make it all come together. But I think, I'm not going to compare him to Max Verstappen hardcore, but as we've spoken about Max Verstappen maximizing what's possible with the car, I think that's what he did today. And unfortunately for the car, 13th is what that was, but I think it was very, very impressive. And if this is the sort of swan song of Zhou Guanyu, I think it's a respectable one.
Just on Bottas, by the way, he said in his post-race quotes that the tyres didn't last as long as they were hoping for. They had planned a 1-stop, but it became clear they'd have to move to 2. So starting on the hards, only a 1-stop strategy could have given me an advantage, but it didn't work out today. It caught us a bit by surprise. And Zhou says, a good race for me. Been a while since we fought in the mid-pack near the top 10, and today I feel we were finally in with a real chance. I believe we maximised the result we could have had with our pace, especially considering there was not a lot of drama happening ahead. So he's happy. Bottas was going for a 1-stop, it didn't work. Started on the hards, of course, and yeah, that's kind of it for Sauber. And again, I hope they get some points, but 2 races left. I'll just check super. Pascal has put a super chat. Thank you, by the way, to Valentine for your super chat at the start of the stream. Sorry I've missed this. Says apologies for the following. Max, Super Max, la 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 la. Chose another T. Thank you very much, Valentine, for your super chat. And Pascal as well. Says happy with Sauber this weekend. The new floor and diffuser have improved the race pace. 3 Q2s in a row. Good point. It was enjoyable seeing Zhou defending and overtaking cars. Thank you very much, Pascal, our resident Sauber fan. One more to go, and that is last and least, I guess. Williams, what could you say? Colapinto, massive crash yesterday, 50G. I mean, that's a huge accident. Was cleared fit to race. They've repaired the car again. Whatever those Williams mechanics are on, they need to be paid more, and I hope they get a massive Christmas bonus and lots of alcohol for Christmas as well, because they've worked hard these last few weeks. So they've rebuilt that car. Colapinto ended up 14th place today. Was involved in quite a bit in that midfield, but maybe the pace was there for points today if things had gone differently for him. But I mean, he's not a million miles away, is he? In fairness, a second off Zhou, and then that's 4 seconds further up the road. So, he's not far off Alonso and co. So I think a pretty decent race for Colapinto, if not spectacular. And Alex Albon retired early on with a mechanical issue. And I would just check their press release because it did come through. I have to flip this one on its side because otherwise I can't read it because I'm getting old. Colapinto, it was a tough weekend. Qualifying yesterday was feeling very good, and I was getting more and more comfortable. But then I started Sorry, I started out too close to Gasly. Had a very messy last corner. Unfortunately, finished with a lot of damage, as we know. From where we started in the pit lanes today, we were able to make some progress and overall did a good job. It was difficult to manage the tyres as we had a lot of graining. That's a word we've heard a lot of this weekend. And again, goes on to thank the team for everything they did. And Alex Albon, we had a good car today and could have scored some good points. So it's frustrating to retire with a suspected PU issue. We need to understand whether it was a similar problem to FP2 or the same issue we had in Singapore. But we'll go away and try and get to the bottom of it. So disappointing for Albon. Not great from Colapinto, but again, he's finished the race, and I think James Vowles probably just said, just don't go anywhere near anyone, Franco. Don't touch a wall. Don't touch another driver. If you're 3 laps down at the end of lap 5, it's fine. Just get the car home. But yeah, no, okay from Colapinto, but not spectacular, and a shame for Albon. But yeah, Williams fallen away a little bit, haven't they? But then, if the drivers keep putting the car in the wall, then it's very difficult to move forward, isn't it? Because while you're repairing a car, you can't be upgrading the car, can you? If you know what I mean. That all your mechanics are working on sorting it out. So I think really, Colapinto, again, okay, but I think star of the weekend, the star of the last 3 weeks is the Williams mechanics. End of.
Oh, absolutely. I don't know if you saw, Williams released a video earlier in the week of it was kind of like a vloggy thing from their home base in Grove, of getting the cars back from Brazil and repairing them all and stuff, and all the mechanics, kind of the camaraderie of doing it all. And they're starting to feel like a real kinship with them. I'm like, oh, this is lovely. So then when Colapinto hit the wall on Saturday or Friday, depending on how you look at it, I felt so sad for them. I felt so sad. I mean, I already felt a bit sad for all the work they're having to do, but yeah, it was like, the work they're doing. They're in a funny position now because they're fairly, unmovable in the constructors, really. I mean, one win from Sauber could upset that, I guess. But otherwise, they are racers. And in theory, they could just say, look, can you just bring the car home? We can't afford you to keep crashing. So if you could just be kind of like mild-mannered for the last 3 races, that'd be great. Obviously, they're not going to do that, but they could do that and lose nothing, really. The good thing for them is the next 2 tracks. It's I was going to say it's very hard to hit a wall, but now I'm thinking about 2021 when a Williams did hit the wall. So, but it's much harder to hit a wall. They're much further away. So hopefully, no more accidents going forward. And I don't know if they might pick up a point or 2, but I don't think they're going to be as involved as the rest of the Haas, Alpine, RB.
I'm liking the idea of a Sauber winning the final 2 races, because that means that's a chaotic race.
I'd be up for it. I'd be very up for it.
Or imagine to get a 1-2, or just it surprises all, and we get a snowstorm in Qatar. It's always snowing in the desert, as you know. And then all of a sudden they get a 1-2 finish and fastest lap, find themselves on 46 points ahead of RB or something. That'd be quite incredible, wouldn't it? But it's not going to happen, I know. But yeah, let's do then driver of the day in questions. Hamilton got the official driver of the day, apparently. So, who have you got, Stuart? It's. I've picked mine, but if you pick the same one, I'll pick somebody else. But yeah, driver of the day. Let me know in chat as well, by the way, peeps.
Mine was Hamilton. I think he was very impressive and picked himself up from not only a disappointing Saturday, but the whole I want to go home and never come back of Brazil. Yeah, I thought he was very impressive, and the fact that he, pushed until he could push no more for that win, I think was great. So I think he did a really great job. I might not have called him my driver of the weekend because he made too many mistakes on the Saturday, but yeah, of today, of the race, he's my driver.
Yeah, that was my pick as well. It's who I voted for in the thingy. So I'll probably go then with George, I think. Yeah, I'm just looking at the order now. There were some good drives in there. Verstappen got the championship, of course. Hulkenberg drove well. Zhou did well, but I think if it's not Hamilton for me, it's got to be Russell. Pretty much, it's dominated a bit much. It feels like he kind of dominated the race. I know the gap isn't 20, 25, 30 seconds, but he never really seemed under threat once he sort of seen off that initial Ferrari challenge. Was comfortable, controlled the race, looked after his tyres, kept it clean, delivered a fantastic result and a victory. So George Russell, I think, for me. But yeah, Hamilton was my pick, because obviously coming back from 10th place to be second and not to be that far off your teammate, all things considered. Yeah, and driver of the weekend, today, I would probably go Pierre Gasly. But then his engine blew up. So, yeah, not his fault, of course, but these things happen. So, yes, that's my pick, George Russell. Only one person's given me their driver of the day in chat, and that was Pim, who's gone with Ruffle. That's his dog. Russell, control all the way. So there we go. I think Russell's a good shout, but let me know later if you're watching this as a video on demand. Then please do let me know in the comments who your driver of the day was, because of course a few people in the UK and around Europe might have waited until this afternoon to watch the race. I might not see them until later, and we'll be well done. And I'll be after this stream, I'm going to go for a bath because we still haven't got a shower.
Oh no!
Don't. It's driving me mad. It's been 5 weeks. 5 weeks since it happened, and then 2 weeks since it was supposed to be sorted. So there you go. So I have a bath, and then I'm going to go play Farming Simulator and fall asleep, and probably find that I've crashed into a tree an hour later or something. It's what happened yesterday.
Nice. Maybe a tactical error. I'm going to watch Gladdington after this.
Ooh. I'm sure you'll enjoy the title sequence and the end credits.
Well, which one? I'm doing Gladiator and Paddington back to back.
I love that you put them together. I only heard Gladiator, then I realised what you said afterwards. I was like, okay, fair enough.
We're seeing Paddington 3 and then Gladiator 2. And we did flirt with the idea of then seeing Red 1 so we can have the full countdown, but I don't think any of us could take it.
No.
That's bought you some time for Drive of the Day.
Yeah, Kirill says Hulkenberg, Pascal says Russell and Joe. Hamilton is my driver of the day, says Vesk, and Flaming Tornado says Stoff. Valentine also says what equals likes. I don't know what's going on there. So, but on the subject of likes, we are 22 away from 100. Let's try and get that to 100 because I like a nice round around triple digits. So please do drop a like and subscribe as well for you. Thanks to everyone who's joined the channel this weekend. I suspect a lot of those joining are here for watch-alongs and not anything else. But look forward to talking to you all next weekend when I am, and I'll just let everyone know again live. Get your questions in as well, by the way. We'll do some Q&A, or we'll just sit and waffle for 10 minutes and then call it a day. But live Friday for the Sprint Quali Watch-Along. Brace yourself, Stuart. Live on Saturday for the Sprint Watch-Along. Then live for the Qualifying Watch-Along on Saturday afternoon before being live for the Race Watch-Along on Sunday. And then live again for the Race Reaction on Sunday afternoon. And then I'm just going to go and cry somewhere.
Are you going to have any voice left when it comes to me? When it's my turn to... Or am I going to have to lead? Fine, that's fine. I can do that. I'll that's gonna be fun.
You'll just be like, hey guys, Stuart here. Sure, can't talk. No, I did joke that it might just be easier to go live on Friday morning and then just stay live until Sunday night. But yeah, Biker John says Lewis Hamilton for the driver of the day. There you go as well. So many lives, says Mike. Yes, and I don't have one either. So there we go. I'll keep an eye on chat. But I'm just trying to think of something we wanted to talk about. Let's answer this one from Rocket P-Bird. Do you think Red Bull doesn't put Yuki in the Red Bull because he doesn't bring in money? See, money's not an issue for Red Bull, but it's always nice to have more, isn't it? Really. But I think Yuki will bring some money, but he won't bring Checo levels of money. He must bring something from Honda. But I don't think he brings Checo levels of money. So money could be a factor, but it's not the same as... I mean, F1's not in a place now where it needs paid drivers like it did a few years ago, which is kind of nice. But obviously, if a team can get a bit of money from a driver as well as a driver that performs, then that's obviously a benefit. But and I think that's what the link is with Franco Colapinto with Red Bull, is if they do let Perez go and they bring Colapinto into one of the teams, they've got all that South American investment again, haven't they? They're going to get those sponsors. So it could be a factor, but it's... I don't get what other people talk about here with Tsunoda, because a lot of people say, well, they don't like his temperament. And I'm like, oh yeah, because Max Verstappen's always a really calm and measured person on the radio, and you know, we never hear Charles Leclerc lose his mind, and Lewis Hamilton never gets stroppy, or do you know what I mean? Like, every driver can have a bad temperament over team radio when the adrenaline's pumping. But then everyone talks about him in the paddock and the pit lane as a really nice guy who's approachable and works well with the team. So I don't really see, who cares what he's saying over team radio if he's doing the job that he needs to do. I mean, I'd rather, if I was a Red Bull boss or a Mercedes boss or whatever, and Yuki Tsunoda's finishing fourth every race, but he keeps telling everyone to F off, I wouldn't really care. It's fourth place and it's points on the board. So, but I go back to what I said earlier. They've got nothing to lose, Red Bull, as far as I'm concerned, and I just say give him the chance. And if he fails, then they've got their answer. I view, and I know it's not how it worked out, but I do view Sainz as the one that got away. And I don't think they need to do the same with Tsunoda. So give him the chance, and if he fails, they know. And if he doesn't fail, they've got a driver there for the next few years, and that gives Lawson and Hadjar and maybe Lindblad in 3 or 4 years' time opportunities to sort of cut their teeth away from the main team and not be rushed through. So and who knows what the driver market will do in the future. But yeah, I'll tell you what we'll talk about Stuart as well. Actually, I've just realised it sounds as though we have an 11th team.
Yeah,
which is rather exciting. That might save Sergio Perez for 26. I don't know if you've read much up on it. I haven't had a chance to read anything with all the lives and that, but it sounds like it's GM, probably under the Cadillac name, but there is some Andretti global involvement somewhere, but not necessarily named, if you know what I mean. So there's going to be an involvement, but I'm not quite sure how it's going to work out. So I'm really fascinated to see what that agreement is, and apparently Automotor und Sport are saying that actually we're going to get an announcement next week, which would feel like it's come out of nowhere almost, even though we found out about it this weekend. But yeah, I'm not sure what the agreement's going to be, but really fascinating times ahead, and customers' supply of engines for 2 years. Sounds like Honda could be a possibility, and then build their own for 28. So Renault replacement before they return again.
Yeah, and it kind of feels like by 2028 we basically would have be at the point of what Andretti would say they were going to be in the first place, but I guess with less aggro against F1. I don't know. I mean, it's interesting that F1 seem much more up for this than they did with the Andretti bid. It seems interesting. I'm not going to bank on it until I see a press release signed by Stefano and MBS and all that, but I think it's good that it seems that F1 is willing to entertain an 11th team, and we'll get more people on the grid and stuff like that. And actually, we've been suffering with a lack of seats compared to junior talent and stuff like that, so I think that will be interesting. I think it will also be very interesting for Cadillac to be operating with someone else's or GM or whoever, but operating under someone else's engine. But I guess Alpine are doing the same thing. So what does it all mean anymore? Yeah, tentatively excited. We'll see what comes of it, and I hope it's done right with the right amount of support, and we don't have a sort of like HRT, Caterham, all that kind of thing, kind of situation where it all just kind of never properly gets going. But yeah, exciting. Very late in the game for this kind of thing. But I'm guessing, considering Andretti have already been building and testing chassis and stuff, they've got a program from which to build from, rather than just, trying to push everything together in 2025.
Yeah, I think I'm a bit skeptical still. Like you say, until either the cars are on the grid or we have confirmation. I mean, I'm still not totally sold Audi's going to happen because of all the changes they keep having in management personnel and all the rumours that keep coming out of Germany. I'm still expecting a Audi, Sauber, Ferrari situation in 2026 potentially. But back to the BMW, Sauber, Ferrari days. But yeah, no, I will wait for the press release, but it sounds like it's going to happen, but you never know. These things can change quite quickly. But just on that, I made the point in the quali stream that, because somebody else said, what was the problem? Veska said it now, so they only had a problem with Andretti. And you just said there that you find it interesting that they're more warm to this than Andretti. I think the problem with Andretti was the way they went about it. And they seemed, they came out and they were very public about it, which was fine. We want to join Formula One. Great. Welcome. go through the processes. They did, but then they were like, oh, look at our nice car, look at our fancy car. Then it was, oh, the teams don't want us. Then they're going around the paddock with a bit of paper trying to get teams to sign a petition to allow them on the grid, and then they're getting vocal, and then the threat of lawyers, and then all of this with the big legal processes now in the US, and you think that's not the right way to go about it. You're rubbing people up the wrong way, whereas maybe General Motors have sort of sat down and said, right, let's Michael Andretti's moved on. Let's talk to Formula One. Let's see if we can thrash out a deal. But they've done it privately, and they've done it sort of away from the spotlight, and maybe that's made F1 go, oh, okay, fair enough, then let's get everything in place. It sounds silly, and maybe not be a reason at all, but Formula One doesn't like being rubbed up the wrong way, and doesn't like being made to look not stupid, but look like something's going on when it isn't. And I don't know. I don't think they're anti-Andretti. I think they were anti the way they went about it. Not helped by an FIA president that nobody seems to like, constantly going, oh no, let them on the grid, and bringing Michael Andretti along to races and been all chummy with him. That probably rubbed them up the wrong way as well, in what is already a permanent power struggle between FOM and the FIA, but even bigger it seems at the moment than it has been for a long time. So, a bit of flexing maybe going on, I don't know, but I'm glad that something's happening. Honda sounds like the engine. There is a rule, obviously, if a team needs an engine and they can't get a supply, the manufacturer who supplies the fewest teams has to give them an engine. There is also a year's grace for new entrants. So, for example, Audi won't have to give an engine to Cadillac, whatever they're called, GM. Honda, funnily enough, qualify for that 1 year grace for 2026 because they went away. Apparently,
it's like Alonso at the young driver test.
Yeah, basically. But it sounds like, obviously, I think GM and Andretti, they've got that link in the US anyway, in IndyCar and things. So I think maybe Honda will be open to that. So Cadillac, Honda for a couple of years before, which actually, by the way, would be good for Aston Martin as well, having two teams running those power units for 26. It's more data, isn't it, if there are problems and things. So that might help Aston Martin out as well. But it's going to be interesting. But I kind of would like to see the Andretti name involved somewhere. And Cadillac Andretti instead of Andretti Cadillac or something. I don't know, but we'll see what comes of it. Hopefully, we'll get some news soon. But yeah, like you, Stuart, until I see it all signed and done, I'm not. I'm not certain it's going to happen. You never know.
No. Just briefly as well, we sort of alluded to the FIA relationship and stuff. I was pleased to see the drivers seem to have got off to a good start with Ryu Marquez. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
Like they seem to have good dialogue. He's listening to them. He's putting in things they want and stuff. Like they seem to be, so they seem to be happy with the way he's running things. Quite speedy as well on responding to Colapinto, and we've his crash in qualifying. And we've spoken in the last few months about how they seem to a little bit lax on like pulling red flag safety cars and stuff like that at times when we thought it should have been quicker. So far so good. Not entirely sure what on earth happened with Neil Vittek, but I'm glad this seems to be a good thing.
Yeah, there's conflicting reports, aren't there? The FIA officially saying that he left to pursue other opportunities, and others saying he was sacked. Very strange, particularly 3 races to go. There's been a lot of sackings of late at the FIA, and I can't help but feel that MBS, as we'll call him, is sort of just, I'm in charge around here. It sort of feels like a little bit, and yeah, the relationship isn't great between the FIA. So I agree, it's good to see that there's been positivity around the new race director. I think they said the best it's been in years, drivers, didn't they, after they spoke to him? So that's good. Maybe a race director that doesn't want to claim the limelight will be nice again. I'm not saying Vittek did, but I do find we talk a lot about race directors on this stream, more than racing when we do these things sometimes. So it'd be nice. Del says, so are Honda and RB PT4 considered new manufacturers? Yes, I believe. Although Red Bull powertrains, maybe not though.
Yeah, I think we'll have to see what's the official, naming, I guess. But if they continue as Red Bull powertrains, then maybe not. It's all complicated loopholes at the end of the day, isn't it?
This is a good question from Pim. We'll do a couple of questions, then we'll call it a day because I think I'm ready for a bath and falling asleep in my combine harvester before I crash into a shed. Pim says, which driver showed the most improvement this year? Piastri is my pick. I think that's a good question, actually. Piastri's a good pick as well, actually, to be fair. I'm not copying out by stealing your answer there, but... Whoa.
It's tricky, this. I'm looking down the list of names.
Sainz has stepped up, hasn't he, as well? I mean, that sounds a bit condescending for a 30-year-old or 30-odd-year-old driver who's been around for a while, but he stepped up quite a bit this year. Maybe someone like could you say a Hulkenberg? Seems a bit weird again, doesn't it, given his age and his experience, but he's been pretty impressive this year. Tsunoda's been pretty good. It could be Piastri, you know?
Yeah, I think Piastri's good. Sainz, I think, has had a very solid year. Like, I don't think he sort of started off shaky and got better. I think from last year to this year, I think Sainz has much improved, and it's been a pleasure to watch him race. Piastri, I think, started the year not bad, but with more of a deficit to Norris than he has now, and then somewhere maybe a third or half of the way through the season, I think started to fulfill his full potential and was really challenging for race wins and poles and things like that. I think he definitely ramped up over the first half of the season. So yeah, I think that's a great shout. Other people looking down the list, I think, have either been quite consistent or dropped off a bit. Maybe Russell's had a good. It's hard to judge because that car's so weird. But he's also perhaps had a bit of a ramp up. But yeah, I think calling Piastri was a good shout.
Yeah, I can't see anyone else on that list. I think Colapinto was one of the surprises. Gasly, yeah, Clay said Gasly in chat. I didn't see him down there grayed out on the on the chart. Flaming Tornado says, I think Stroll has improved from extremely crap to just very crap. Fair enough.
Brazil begs to differ.
Yeah, we'll not repeat what I said on that one. Yeah, I mean, maybe Gasly, yeah. I was just sort of Colapinto, a bit of a surprise. He was left field pick, wasn't he, when Sargent was dropped, and we were all a bit like, really? And then apart from his crashing, obviously, his pace-wise, he's rapid, and he delivers some results better than Sargent did anyway with his points this season, so he was a bit of a surprise. But yeah, Gasly's a good shout as well, to be fair. The most intriguing driver for me is Alex Albon. I think we've touched on it before. First, pre-Sargent being dropped, we're all talking about how great he is, and could he have been in with a shot at that Mercedes seat in the future? Maybe he could be an option for Red Bull. And then Colapinto came in and started to the first couple of races together and was delivering some great results and was on the pace. We thought, okay, hang on a minute, and maybe in more recent weeks it swung the other way again. But Albon's been a bit of an intriguing one this year, I would say. But yeah. That's a tough question, actually. I asked it, but I didn't have an answer. But Piastri's a good shout. Gasly's another great shout as well. I just see a question, not a question, but a point I wanted to read, and I can't find it now. Yeah, maybe not. I can't find it now. Struggling to read things. Any more questions, chat? This is something. Lee says it's more that Yuki is not a team player. I love him, but I don't think he is going to move out of the way for Max too often. That's a fair point as well. But then, contractually, Red Bull could cover that, couldn't they? You are the number 2 driver. You'll do as you're told. If not, you'll be back in an RB quicker than you can say F off. I don't know. Whatever his temperament issues are, you can cover that quite easily. Pascal says, based on current performance, could we see 4 teams in the fight for the championship from Melbourne? Yes. But I still have this horrible feeling that we're all bigging up 2025 and Red Bull are going to solve their problems and rock up and dominate, or McLaren are going to come and dominate, or Ferrari come and dominate, and we're all going to be like, oh, that's disappointing. But with 2026 looming, convergence should be pretty big next year as well, so you might even be closer between the top 4 than we've seen this season. So I think as of today, the 24th of November, but bear in mind this could all change over the winter and testing and whatnot. But as of today, Red Bull, McLaren and Ferrari certainly. Mercedes, if they can work out why the car was fast this weekend and move that onto other tracks and carry that over, then maybe, but certainly 3. But again, things should converge again next year, shouldn't they, Stuart?
Yeah, in theory. And look, we can't predict what's going to happen over the winter, what they've been working on all year for next year's cars and stuff like that. We can only really go on what we've got to look at now. So I'm kind of cautiously optimistic. We're going to have a sort of continuing story from where we are now. I don't think teams are going to make any massive swings for 2025, considering 2026 is looming. Having said that, you look at the shift from 2023 to 2024, massively different. So there is potential for any one of these teams to have unlocked some kind of golden who's who what's it in the rules, in the car, in the design, and come out miles ahead, or for like a lower team to join the ranks. We can't tell, but from where we are now, I think it puts us in an optimistic position for some good competition next year. Definitely don't write off Red Bull from fixing everything that's wrong, but perhaps based on McLaren's trajectory over the last few years, they're going to come out dominant next year. It's hard, and Ferrari will Ferrari.
Yeah,
of course.
Don't. Ferrari will Ferrari, but with a Hamilton as well. That's social media is going to be fun, isn't it? What was going to say that? There's a little bit very quickly, and then we're going to finish. And it's not anti-Norris. I'm not hating on Lando. There is a bit of me, quite a big bit of me, that would like McLaren to be the team to beat next year and Piastri to beat Norris to the championship, because I think there'd be quite the meltdown in certain corners of the media, and I think I quite enjoy that.
You just court drama, don't you?
I do. I love it. I also, Piastri winning Australia, I'd love to see that as well, by the way. Imagine that'd be amazing. But
for less dramatic reasons, I think that would be cool, because I actually do really like Piastri. I think he's a great driver, and I think he's a great guy. I like listening to him, and I think that would be really enjoyable.
I love Anus Pastry. He's great. Anyone new will just think I've cracked. There is a reason to that one. But yeah, no, I like Piastri a lot. Yeah, that was it, really. We'll leave it there then, Stuart. Thank you very much for your company, and thank you for getting up to watch the race and staying up to stream with me. We've got a long break now until next weekend for the next one. And then, of course, Abu Dhabi. We're nearly there. It's nearly all over. Where is this year gone? Oh, here goes Grandad. But yeah, thank you, Stuart. It's been a pleasure. And looking forward to kind of gloves off in the drivers now. They can go for it.
Yeah. I mean, everyone can really. Yeah, I think it's gonna be a good couple of final weekends. We still have that question mark about whether they fixed the issues with Qatar that we had last year, or whether we're gonna have another absolute endurance fest and drivers fainting and all kinds of things happening, and tires exploding and mandatory pit stops and all that kind of thing. But that we'll find out next weekend. So yeah, it's a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to going to shower and trying to survive the rest of the day.
It should be. It's supposed to be cooler in Qatar, 20 to 25 degrees this year, a bit later in the year, isn't it? So should be okay, but the curbs are still going to be a concern, aren't they? So I don't know what they've addressed there, but I'll have a look for the preview, and then we can have a chat about all the tyres that explode next Sunday, and Sauber get their first 1-2 in history. Or no, they won. Let's not get into the BMW Sauber argument. Let's not do that another day. Yes, thank you, Stuart. Enjoy your afternoon, and I'll talk to you probably in the week at some point, but definitely next Sunday for the race reaction for Qatar.
Hurrah! Bye for now.
Bye, Stuart. Enjoy your afternoon. Thank you to Stuart. Thank you to you guys as well, not just for tuning in for this, but also tuning in for the watch-alongs this weekend and everything else. Great to have you on board. Very quickly, rate the 2024 Las Vegas Grand Prix. 50% of you said good, 26% said okay, 21% said great, and bad was 1%. We're also 7 likes away from 100, so let's see if we can get 7 more likes as I sign off and get that to a nice triple digit. But yeah, thank you very much for tuning in. That's the wrong screen, Sean. Let's move on. There we go. Now, I will be back on Thursday with the Qatar Grand Prix preview, of course. That's a video. And then live on Friday with the Sprint Quali Watch-Along, live on Saturday with the Sprint Watch-Along, the Qualifying Watch-Along, and then live on Sunday with the Race Watch-Along and the Race Reaction with Stuart again. So looking forward to hanging out with you all weekend next week again. For the third time, thank you very much to everyone who subscribed over this weekend. It's great to have you on board and looking forward to these final couple of races. Make sure follow me on social media at F1 Word, the F1 Word, wherever we are in the world. You'll find me over on most of the platforms somewhere. And for the latest Formula 1 news and reaction, head on over to planetf1.com. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word. And until next time, goodbye.